This is Jude, and Jude has decided that he's going to be kind of a little bit of a security dog for his guardian. Now, we just got done talking off camera why that is the case. I think it's because he really doesn't have a lot of rules. His guardian and him are by themselves, so we don't have anybody else, and we just moved to a new town, so we don't have a lot of people coming and going. And I think that the lack of socialization is kind of causing problems. Also, it sounds like the guardian has used a couple of trainers for behavior problems, and the problem with doing that is the methods to, as a dog psychologist or using dog behavior, are different than the approaches we use for training. There's some similarities, but a lot of it is very different. So basically what we're going to do here is I'm going to start off by talking about things we can do to help him stop being so reactive in the house. Now, we already started this off camera by talking about rules and structure and how we can enforce those. Now, we have kind of cozy quarters. We have the front door over here, and what I'm actually going to have the guardian do is I'm going to go a different direction than what we talked about. I'm going to have her walk this way, and she's going to walk over there, just so you can see this kind of gauntlet that we have. So go ahead and keep it facing me if you could, and just kind of go ahead and turn, now walk backwards about 8 steps. Okay, and if you want to get a little closer to the wall here. Now basically, if you can see, we have the front door to the house right there. Now the closer we get to that door, the wider the dog's angle of vision is going to be. Now we have kids, and there's like kind of a watering hole, a swimming pool over here, and the kids, I think the school must be over here because the kids are walking in this direction. And when he sees them, again, he thinks because of the lack of rules that his job is to be in charge of security. And so when he sees them, then he corrects, or he announces people are here. And one of the trainers said you should get up and tell him thank you for doing that, and now he's doing it a lot more. So we don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is I have him on a leash, and as you can see, I'm stepping on the leash. What I would do when the weather gets a little bit nicer, and I'm not going to open the door because it'll make it very backlit, but we'd have that door open, there's a screen door there. Now I'm going to be standing on the leash like this, and I have a window over here that I can actually see the kids are going to be walking the street if they're walking in this direction. So what I would do is I'd kind of flip up one of the vents on the screen, or one of the slats for the shade, so I can see through there. And I'm going to do this like at 3 o'clock or whatever time the kids are, there's going to be a lot of people walking by. Now as soon as I see a kid coming, and I'm going to count it out, at first I would maybe count, where the kid's walking, and it takes a count of 15 before he appears here. Now when the outdoor and the inside door is open, he's going to be able to see the kid, but only for about 1.5 seconds. So as soon as I see the kid through the window slat in the shade here, I'm going to start counting. 12, 13, if it's 15, at like 13, 14, I'm going to give him a treat. He's going to be looking that way, and he's going to see the kid. No, but it's going to take him about 2 seconds to chew this treat. And I'm stepping on the leash to prevent him from rushing the door. The more a dog moves around, the more animated, we call it aroused. Not sexual, but just the more worked up they get. Come here. So we can do this a couple ways. So what I would do is, now if he has a soft mouth, which he kind of does, I can take one of these treats and smash it so it looks like a pancake. And then basically what I can do is, I'm going to show you how I can do it with him, is I'm going to let him nibble on it. And you can see I can change what direction he looks just by moving the treat. So the idea for this is you can do it one of 2 ways. I would think, since it's only going to be 1.5 seconds, so you see the kid coming, you count yourself, 11, 12, 13, 14, and he's going to see the kid right after the treat goes in his mouth. He's going to try to finish chewing it, and then so he wants to bark at the kid. But by the time he finishes chewing, the kid has now gone this way and is no longer in his line of sight. And this is a little bit of counter-conditioning. Counter-conditioning is exposing the dog to a stimulus, something that he reacts to, in this case, people passing by the front of the house. Now we want to increase the distance so the dog doesn't feel that the stimulus is a threat. So we have about 100 feet outside the front door before the street happens. And we've moved several feet away from the house. We might have to move further in the room where the camera actually is. But eventually the idea is, can I get the dog to sit? And you don't have to, but my 2 tests are, can I get the dog to sit, and be interested in the treat? So if I put the treat and he sees the kid and he stops chewing the treat and looks around, then I'm too close. Or if he starts to get up out of his sit, then I'm too close. We have to do, and I've been talking this off camera, we have to have the dog what we call sub-threshold. Right now he's sub-threshold. Threshold is when he reaches the point of, now I've got it going crazy. So we want to practice all these things sub-threshold, and we want him to practice a new behavior over and over again in a controlled situation where we control the stimulus and we can provide a nice reward, and he's only going to see the stimulus for 1.5 seconds. So I see, I count, boom. And he's ready to bark, and then they're gone. So in counter conditioning, when the thing that's happening that I don't want to have happening is occurring, I'm getting the treat. And as soon as The thing that I want to have happen, which is the person moves away, the treat goes away. So when the thing I don't want to have happen happens, I'm getting this delicious treat. When the thing I want to have happen, the treat goes away. Well, after a while, I want to invert it. I want the treat. And so I don't mind if the thing is going on because that means I'm still getting the treat. Now, when we do this at this distance, what I would do is do it here until I get what we like to practice until we get what we call 5 for 5. And if you get the dog laying down when you're doing this, that's brilliant because that tells him, I'm so relaxed about this, I can take a very subdued position. Or this is kind of a less confrontational position. So for 5 for 5, what we'd like to have happen is when he sees the dog or the person coming, I pop the treat in his mouth, and the person passes and he doesn't bark, and he's completely relaxed. And then we do that 5 times in a row where there's no barking. Then what we would do is we would move 1 step closer to the door, and then we keep on practicing. Now this is going to be many practice occasions. This isn't going to be one sitting. But eventually you want to get to the point where you'll be standing. Now as the closer you get to the door, now that my field of vision is wider and wider, now I can see the kid for longer and longer periods of time. So we have to practice this first and counter condition him so that he sees, what he essentially thinks is kids arrive in front of the house, treats fall from the sky. I like treats. And since they happen at the same time, I start to have a correlation between the two of them. Now eventually you get, like I said, you're going to go very slow and very methodically, but eventually you should be able to be right up at your door and the kid, and he's watching the kid come by, and he's not doing it. Now, when it's longer than 1.5 seconds, you might have to do the squishing trick that I mentioned. Now, when I do this, if he's looking in this direction, I would use my left hand if I'm sitting here. I would smash the treat here, and I'm going to keep my hand almost like an OK, with these 3 fingers down and these 2 fingers in the OK position. I'm going to put these 3 fingers under his chin, and so I'm not obscuring his line of sight. And now he can look and see the kid. If I hold it like this, I'm blocking him. So the idea is, you can make the treat last a little bit longer. He has a little bit of a hard mouth. I'll show you a trick off camera how to make that, stop that. But this way I can actually have him looking at the kid, chew, 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 chew. And now the kid goes on my sight and we pop the rest of the treat in his mouth. And he finishes chewing that and the kid's gone. Now eventually we'll be able to go outside the house. And when we're outside the house, now you're going to repeat the process. But now we have the sight and the sound and the smell of the child. So that might be a little much. You might actually have to practice with your outside door open and your inside door open. So you can have a little bit of the sights and sounds, but still be in the house. And again, step on it, make sure you feel good and secure. So we don't want him lunging and running out the door. He doesn't do that. But the more that we can do this, this is a great counter conditioning technique because it helps the dog become more and more comfortable with people passing by the front of the house. And not only is it not something I need to learn about, it's actually a good thing. Good things happen when people pass. Now, when you actually get to the point where you're out and about and you're out on a walk, he's protective of the guardian if she's out on walks. Now, she's been using a prong collar, which I don't ever use because that's a pain-inducing collar. That's all she could find to control him. I have a martingale collar. I'm going to show her off camera how she can use a special twisted leash to make this much more, give her a lot more power and control over the dog without causing any pain or discomfort to the dog. But he can catch. So one of the things I would do is when you're walking around, if you have a neighbor or somebody that's pretty confident with dogs, again, you have to make sure that he's not going to be able to get to the person. I don't think he's going to. He just barks. He wants people to move away. What we would have the person do is maybe have the person walk up kind of slowly and casually and very quietly, and don't look at the dog in the eye. Just be a very nice, relaxed, and then as soon as you see the dog's ears come forward, the hackles start to go up, the tail going up, the lowering the head, he stops breathing or breathes really heavy, he's getting close to his breaking point. So you need to take note of whatever that distance is. And the idea is we'd like to get to the point where that distance, and if you could, you could actually do the same counter conditioning. If he starts getting those things, so you have the person set up, maybe we have a walkway or something where the dog can see the person as he's approaching. We're doing the counter conditioning, letting him chew on the treat. And as soon as he stops chewing the treat or gets tense, we kind of hold up our hand, we have a signal, the person stops. And they turn and go the other direction. So that way we don't actually get him to the point where he's reacting. The whole point of this is to practice below or sub-threshold. But eventually what we can do is have the person, we get to the point where the person could be like 8 feet away. Most of us think, I'm going to pet the dog and show you I'm a good person. Well, the dog's like, I think you're creepy. You touching me is the last thing I want you to do. I want more distance between you. But we'd like to create a positive association. So one of the things I found for dogs that have the skill set he has that I'm about to show you, so we have the person stop maybe 10 feet away. Oops. You got that a little slippery. How about we get a sit? So they stop at 10 feet away and they just toss the treat. So you might give them like 5 treats. So he watches up and he tells them to sit, tosses the treat, He catches it, and when people throw the treat, a lot of times they go 1, 2, then they throw in the third one. That screws the dog up. So just to be the first toss, and make sure it's a good toss. So all your best has to do basically opens his mouth and goes into his mouth. And then the person tosses a treat. He gets up, sit. The person is telling him a direction. Sit. He sits. We toss another treat. Do that for like 5 treats, and then the person walks away. So the person didn't get so close that I felt it would be a threat, and good stuff happened. I got treats from that person, and he didn't try to touch me. He didn't get any closer than I was comfortable with. And the next time, and then you recreate that later on the same day or the next day. Maybe now you get to 9 feet, and to 8 feet, and 7 feet, and so on and so forth. So eventually you get to the point where he can take the treats out of your hand, but only if he's not showing any signs. His hackles need to be down. His ears shouldn't be up. It shouldn't be stiff. Your gut shouldn't be telling you, ooh, his energy doesn't feel right. Listen to your sixth sense. Now, the more that we do this, eventually he feels more and more comfortable with that experience, because again, good stuff happens. It's like we go to grandma's house, there's a lot of candy there. Grandma was hoping that you really like going to grandma's house. Well, when I came in, she asked him to stay back, and I had her take off the prong collar, one of the first things I saw. But if we pull a dog back, dogs have an opposition reflex. If we try to pull them back, they're going to cause them to pull forward even more force. So what we want to do is get the dog to move away from the door, if possible. Now, if he's a little bit more relaxed like he was today, then I would maybe have the person maybe have a small ramekin of treats right outside your door when you have guests coming over. And I would arrange to have guests come over so you can practice this. So what they should do is, if he's barking a little, going crazy, have the person just like stand there and wait. And then eventually what I did is I opened the door and I had my foot braced against the door, so it could only open an inch. And I let him have access to my knee. And it wasn't big enough where he could get his whole hand out, so he couldn't bite my knee. And the knee is a lot of surface area, it's rounded. So he couldn't actually get to it. And don't do it if he's growling or really aggressive. He was animated, but he wasn't too bad when I got here. And then he seemed nice and relaxed, so I offered to let him sniff the treat. He was very interested in the treat. I gave him a treat, and then I did that 3 or 4 times, and then he was a little bit more comfortable. Then I started telling him to sit. He sat, and then I gave him a treat. Then I took a step inside the door. And so if you can recreate that same process, then you start to see when people come over, my human isn't nervous about it. If you're nervous, that'll set him off. But we can also do things to set him up for success, like take him out for a walk beforehand. So before I have a guest come over to practice, we go out for a half-an-hour walk. We use the saddlebags or the doggy backpack, and we come back in. He's breathing heavy. We give him a couple minutes to catch his breath, so he shouldn't be panting at all. And then we take it off that hard edge, and when the person comes over, and we repeat that enough, the person, and you might have a couple of situations where the person comes in, sniffs a little bit, gets a treat, and you're like, I don't feel like it. Hey, Bob, let's try this again tomorrow. And then and that's why it's helpful to have your neighbor doing it. And then Bob goes right next back door and hangs out. And the dog's like, wow, Bob came over. I got to sniff Bob. He gave me some treats, but he didn't even come inside. So it might take 3 or 4 times, and eventually he's like, man, I like Bob. Bob's always packing some really good treats. And then he's more and more relaxed. That in conjunction with all the things we went over off camera, the rules and structure and enforcing that and acting like a leader, rewarding him for desired actions, behaviors, all these things are going to kind of flip the leader-follower dynamic. But we do need to arrange practice sessions where we do have people come in, come here, buddy, sit, and practice these greetings so we do develop some social skills. All right, what do you think about that, Jude? Yeah, such a good boy. Shake, do you know how to shake? Shake, that's a big paw. Well, this is Jude, and these are some tips and tricks you can use to help a dog stop being reactive when people pass by our home or come inside.